All right, welcome back. We are noticeably playing an away game today. Space is fucking awesome. I am here with Julius Margulies, who, how would you intro your, I mean, we got fine artist, sculptor, tattoo artist, entrepreneur. Like, am I doing it justice?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do all those things.
And this is where it all goes down.
This is where it goes down and up.
But I should give some context to how we got here. So Sarah, who just started working for us, knew you from a project you guys were working on before, fell in love with you, like is a super fan. She's just like, this guy's energy is incredible. He's got a great story of kind of redemption and some mental health stuff and some substance. So, Google's a powerful tool. So naturally you go and you start reading about you. And for me, I'm sitting here with someone who's very humble, very good at his craft. In a lot of ways, like, I feel like your art is going to change the world. I mean, it's like I'm looking at it and it makes me feel good and it makes me have hope. And hearing your story gives me hope. Tell me, so when I came in today, you made very clear to tell me that you do not, if someone wants to come into your studio or someone wants to talk to you or get a tattoo, they can't just put their arm out and say, hey, I want a cross with my mom's initials and like the day that she died and, like the rosary like falling off of it. You're like, there's other people to do that, and that's fine, and there's no judgment. But if someone wants to work with you, what is the deal? They have to submit an essay?
They got to write me a story. It could be PowerPoint. It could be a short blurb. It could be, but the idea is like I'm giving you a piece of my soul, as cheesy as it may sound. Like I want a piece of yours back. When somebody actually takes the time to articulate their story, what ends up happening is that writing has sort of been lost on this era. And when people are forced to write, they have to be concise. They know I'm going to read it. They know someone else is going to read it. They don't want to sound dumb. So they write it, and then they reread it and rewrite it, and so on and so on. And in effect, they actually give themselves like a therapy of this moment. Because most of the time when people write to me, it's about something traumatic that they're either going through or they overcame. And so in writing that to me, they're sort of giving themselves a therapeutic moment and reliving this thing and understanding what it means to them. And they believe that my tattoo is their therapy, when in reality, they're giving themselves therapy, and the tattoo is just like a receipt of that moment. It's sort of like a closing of that chapter.
Beautiful.
So that's why I request that people take the time to do that.
And then they have like whatever you are inspired to do, they're in.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's on their body forever. So it's important to me that they love it. And if they don't, then we just reconfigure it. I think 95% of the time, what I make is what they want. Because it's my responsibility to create something that's never been done before. And that's why as time goes on, my job becomes more challenging, because my objective is to create work that's not derivative. And that's really hard when I feel like in the beginning it felt easy because I was like, oh, like, yeah, I never did this before. But the thing is, because I've done all these things, now I also can't go back to the shit that I've done because I feel like it's like breaking the rules for me. So it's like, I'm like, fuck, where do I go from here,
Dude.
Which is why and then that's why I moved into fine art, because everyone dies. And then all my art's gonna be gone because they're dead. And my art is on them. So like, fuck, I need to immortalize this shit. And so my objective was to find a way to show my art. So that's why I made the light boxes, because the best example is when I tattoo a portrait of your dog on you, it's surreal, because how could something so real exist on your arm? It's like the newspapers in Harry Potter. Magical. Now, when I take that same dog portrait and I draw it on a paper and slap it on the wall, it's no longer surreal. It's just a dog portrait. It's just realistic. And the reason I moved into light boxes was because it presents the artwork with depth and dimension, and it makes the viewer question, how does this thing even exist? How is it put together? How many layers there are? And I think the objective with making good art is there technical prowess? Does it make me smile or laugh? And does it make me question how the fuck that even got put together?
And so, when do you put the ink in the pen?
Yeah, like I forget what year it was. 20 whatever year it was, like 7 years ago.
Okay.
I was walking past Strand Books. It was Christmas time. It was like probably exactly to this day. And I was wanting to draw. I just had this like burning desire to just draw. I don't fucking know. I had with the real estate stuff, I had made a bunch of money, went and got tattooed and shit, and I was like, oh, this is cool. But I never drew. I guess in college I did, but I was so high that I forgot. I would like go and do graffiti and shit, but I don't remember. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Of course I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So I had never like drawn seriously or anything. I mean, so anyway, I just wanted to draw, and I was getting all these tattoos. Right, that was the point. I was getting all these tattoos, and I was like, this is sick, you know? And I was like, this is like a world that I never really thought about, you know? Anyway, so a few years later after the tattoos, I just felt compelled to draw, and then it just like within 2 weeks, I was just like, had a tattoo license, and then, yeah, it was like nonstop. And I think it's important to paint this picture is that I had those buildings in Williamsburg. They were empty, and all the landlords around me are these like old suit and tie motherfuckers that are just like off, like just people I don't want to be like. And so maybe as an act of sort of rebellion or whatever, I had this building, it was vacant, and I told all the people I know, like, hey, if you want to like be creative here, the door's open. That's the only rule. It's like you can't just be here like fucking around. Like you can fuck around, but you have to be contributing. You have to be productive. And next thing I knew, I had like all these rappers and actors and all, because it's in the middle of fucking Williamsburg. It's like a popular place.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I'm in Kentucky or some shit. No disrespect to Kentucky, but I mean,
We love Kentucky here.
Yeah, Kentucky's my favorite. They have the best chicken. It's fried. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, next thing you know, because I approached life with open arms, it hugged me back. I had all these people. I just came up with that. That's a good one. Ding. So, next thing you know, I built this huge community of people because I had this space and I was willing to, and it was just this obscure thing for them. Who would have thought, you know? So, once I started drawing, and then I got a tattoo license, and I had told all these people, they're like, yeah, I want a tattoo. I was like, I want it now. I was like, I don't have my license yet. They're like, no, I want it now. And I was like, no, I don't have my license. Like, you know, I just wanted to do things right. Because if there's one thing that scared the shit out of me was doing something. Like, my greatest fear is losing my freedom.
Yeah.
Having my freedom taken from me.
Yeah.
Because I've had it taken from me so many times, and it scares the shit out of me. That's why I try and do everything by the book when I can. Because
is that a spiritual or a psychological freedom, or is that a being able to walk out your front door and do what you want freedom, or a little bit of both?
Oh, I think it's across the board. The one that scares me the most is like jail. Like just being in a small, like I am claustrophobic because of all the trouble I got into, because of being in the back of the cop car and my fucking wrist being smushed. And
yeah, it's a trauma.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't think I'll ever live that down. But yeah, that definitely like psychologically, you know, finds its way out in other ways of not wanting. That's why when I have a piece of art that people relate to, like, I'll give you an example. When I started tattooing, I started doing all these images of like children in, you know, in the artwork. They were the subject matter. And next thing you know, there was like all these people writing in like, hey, I really like this kid that you did. Can you also tattoo like something like that for me? And I was like, all of a sudden realized I was being pigeonholed as like the guy that tattoos kids. So I immediately stopped. And I think that's part of, I don't ever want to be pigeonholed into a thing. And I think like, just like I don't want to be pigeonholed into the back of a fucking cop car. It's like the same. So that's what happened. I like exploded out of real estate into drawing. And because I built that community, they all wanted tattoos. And then,
Is the first person you tattoo, like, I trust you here?
Dude, it was insane.
Like, because that's the thing for me. I always think about, like, who wants to be the first patient of the doctor doing open heart surgery? Like, who wants to be patient number one? I don't.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people just don't give a fuck as long as they like you.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I mean, I was tattooing 3-4 people a day, and it's like I was just showing my buddy. He was like, "Hey, let me see like your first tattoos," and I was like, "There's this one. Oh, this was on the same day. Oh, this was on the same day." It's all in a folder on my phone. I was like, "Damn, I had tattooed a fuckload of people just in the first like 3 months."
Yeah,
it was just like. Bam, oh, he's doing tattoos. Oh, they're like free. Oh, they're just $100. Like, yeah, whatever. And it was just like, the 10,000 hours, of just like, so.
Who's that? Gladwell? Who says 10,000 hours?
Gladwell, yeah. I just read The Revenge of the Tipping Point.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you read that one.
Not The Revenge. So, your childhood, you grew up.
So, okay, yeah, I was born in this land, a popular one. I was born in Jerusalem. And we moved here when I was like 2 or 3. Here being New York City, or like White Plains area. And, just spent my life kind of like this immigrant kid being raised with like immigrant values in a very like non-immigrant place. So I think that affected my, it just affected how I grew up, because I always sort of felt like an outsider, even if I was part of like a cool crowd. Like their families would always go on vacation together, and my family was like not involved. They were all Italians from the Bronx, and we're from Israel, so they like it's like, oil and water.
You go to treatment at 20, so what led up?
Yeah, essentially I was, so, let's see, what's the best way to put it? I just like, providing, a good time for people. And it was just, it was a sort of like my drug of choice as well, because people would just call me. And I was like, oh, they like me,
right.
And so, yeah, but at the end of it all, I had started like mixing Xanax and Percocet and ketamine and ecstasy.
Sounds amazing.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
I honestly thought I was like Bradley Cooper in Limitless. Like, it was incredible. Yeah, like it was incredible. Yeah. Yeah, until it wasn't, you know what I mean? And then it was really the Xanax that did me in pretty bad. And anyway, so yeah, I fell asleep in the car. The car was still in reverse. I was trying to parallel park and get a bagel. I was awake for like 4 days. My friend was supposed to be working at the bagel shop. He called out. It was like Christmas or December 27th.
Yeah.
2010. And then, just like woke up and there was glass like hitting my face, and it was the police, surprise.
Breaking into the car.
Yeah. And I was just like so cooked. Like it was pretty, I mean, now it's funny, but it wasn't funny at all. Right. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, there's just a lot of drugs in the car. A lot of drugs.
Can I ask a question about that?
What's that?
So, drug deal. Oh, well, providing a good time for people.
Yeah.
Being the source, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to other guys, and they've struggled with the idea that they had this identity for however long it is, and their phone rings nonstop, and they feel very liked.
Mm-hmm.
But then once the drugs go away,
right,
and the phone stops ringing, it's that's actually the hardest part to kind of like the come down from. Did these people really like me?
Uh-huh.
And I think in your success in the art world, it's probably a little bit of the same. Like, do they like me, or do they like my work, or is like, how do you balance? Because a lot of being a drug dealer is you have something that people want.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is
Or need.
With tattooing, it's like it's kind of the same thing. I just can't get arrested for it, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
It is that was definitely my drug of choice. I mean, was making money. You know what I mean? And that's sort of like a futile existence, because if your objective is make money, then you will never reach happiness, because there's infinity money. Like, even if you got every dollar ever, now you got to go get every rupee ever, every peso ever. You're never going to win that battle. So you're never going to be happy. And so that was a lesson that I had to learn in my early years, was that like the objective of just having a lot of money is the wrong objective. Like, there needs to be purpose and fulfillment in the things you do, and success and money is a byproduct of seeking fulfillment, and that's it. Yeah. So, but that's what I learned in my sobriety, was that like my objective of trying to get money, which is why I wanted to be what I was just the wrong objective. And yeah, the come down from not being like popular anymore was an interesting one. But yeah, then I had to seek fulfillment. So shifted gears from that.
So you came out of that treatment experience and you're, I guess, 20 years old or 21 years old, and you're 20. Like, when did you, like, did you therapy, or would you?
Well, I just did so much therapy and so much of that stuff in the first few years.
Yeah.
That I kind of was like, all right, like, the only time I'm bringing up this painful thing is with my therapist. It doesn't exist anywhere else. Right. And I was like, all right, this is a scam. Like, I'm out. You know, it's like, I'm talking about this, like, I had this girlfriend that she like broke my heart, and I would go to my therapist to talk about it. And after like a year, I recognized that the only time I would ever bring this up was there. And I was like, we're done. Like, right. I've graduated. Like, this is not, it's not that I'm cured or whatever the fuck, but it's just like, this is unnecessary. And then when I went to the rooms, I was just like, all right, like, another story about somebody's son who killed someone. And I'm just like, all right, it's not that I've heard it all, but it's like, I kind of heard it all. And it's like, it almost felt that I was using it as a crutch, when in reality, I just needed to call shit for what it was and get my fucking life to the next stage of where I wanted it to be. I had reached this like level of success that was unprecedented for me. Like, I always knew I would achieve success like that, but then I had got there and I was like, wow, super depressed,
Mental health.
Yeah. I was just like, this is, because what happened was, once I became sober, I had to earn the love and trust and everything of my family back. And in order to do that, the idea was like, be an upstanding citizen, be successful in business, get my shit together.
Yeah, but I think the other thing that we fail to realize is that when we get sober, we also have to earn the love and respect of ourselves back.
Right.
Like, look in the mirror and say, okay, I actually kind of like this person that's looking back at me. And I spent a lot of time running out to family and friends and all these other people in my life, trying to get the cookie and show everyone, like, hey, look at me, I'm sober now, like, you should love me. And some of them were like, dude, fuck you.
Right.
Who do you think you are? And so that's when I realized, I think it sounds like you did too, that at some point I had to start taking care of myself.
Yeah.
In sobriety.
Yeah. So, wait, can I ask you some questions?
Yeah, let's do whatever.
So, from, like, all right, in the sense of like a school, right? You start in preschool and you graduate university. So what's that process like for your programs? Like, what's the entry and what's the exit?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you want to talk about treatment,
Yeah.
like a school system, it's a great question, and I don't think we look at it enough this way. The treatment system's fucked.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen the movie 28 Days with Sandra Bullock. It's a pretty bad movie about inpatient treatment. You know, like it came out in the 90s. That is very much what we thought for many, many years worked. Basically, you send someone to some farm somewhere for 28 days, and they either get sober or they don't, and then you release them back to the world, and you know, they either go back to drinking or they don't. And it was kind of like that's the amount of time that insurance companies were willing to pay for someone to get care.
Okay.
We know enough now that like it has its benefits. I went to rehab. I went to rehab for 4.5 months. I think
I went to rehab.
You went to rehab,
Yeah.
so you know what we're talking about. I view detox and rehab as the ICU.
Okay.
So if you can wrap your head around that, like, yes, they are walking and talking and presenting as a normal human being once the drugs are out of their system, but they've been living a certain way for so long that they don't know how to exist in the world. So to your point, you're in preschool when you're in rehab.
Right.
Literally, you know nothing about yourself, why you do the things you do, why
Right.
you act out, what you're addicted to, why your mind is this way, why you feel the way you feel. And so I always say, like, if we can get someone for a year, like if you had a buddy that was struggling or mental health, substance abuse, I would ask for a year.
Okay.
And on the front end, you kind of front load it, right? You put them in detox, you put them in rehab, but then you slowly allow them to start practicing these things in the real world, and you
Yeah.
keep some of the supports in place. So by the end of that year, you hope that, you know, they're living a fully autonomous life where they're happy and they have purpose and they have vision and they're not relying on, you know, drugs, sex, whatever it was to fuel the dopamine hit.
Okay, so when I went to rehab, there was no, at least from what I can remember, there weren't really any tools provided. It was weird. It was kind of just like a safe
When was this?
room. 2010. It was like, you know, there was no step work, no Alcoholics Anonymous book, like Narcotics Anonymous. There was none of it. And I was like confused by that. Well, here's the thing. I never knew what rehab was. Like, I was messing around in the drug world, and like people would just like get sent away, and then I'd be like, oh, where's like Steve? And they're like, he's in rehab. And I was like, oh, did he like hurt his leg or something? And they're like, no,
Right.
he's like gone. I was like, oh, all right. Because I had never, you know, I was always well stocked with drugs. So it's like,
See, I was a terrible drug addict.
okay.
Whatever I had was getting done that night, and then
Yeah.
I was waking up the next day, and it was back to figuring it out.
Okay, so the thing is, like, I didn't know what, wow, I'm drawing a blank. Not like detox, but when you're like going through it.
Withdrawals?
Withdrawals.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what the fuck that was, because I was always like
Good.
well stocked.
Yeah.
So like, they're like, oh yeah. So then when I got to rehab, I was going through withdrawals, but I didn't know if it was the jail sentence that they was hanging over my head, or actual drug withdrawal that was like fucking me up. But back to the point is that there weren't tools. What is there now? Are there tools, or is it like a 30-day period of like, all right, we're just gonna make sure you don't do some stupid shit, and then we're gonna start assimilating you. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah, into, yeah.
So I think if a treatment center is really being honest with you,
Yeah.
and you're calling and you're saying, I want to come for 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
what they're going to tell you is that we're only going to be able to scratch the surface.
Yeah.
Physically, we need to remove the substance, whatever it is, from your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are going to start to try and motivate you to make some changes.
Yeah.
You know, through individual therapy, hopefully like group therapy. Obviously, if you were in rehab, you remember the community, right? So being around
Yeah.
people that are going through the same thing can be helpful. You mentioned, you know, 12-step recovery, so AA, NA. There's smart recovery. There's DARM. There's a lot of different options right now for community and how to get connected to a program of recovery. And then a lot of that time is going to be set up figuring out what you're going to do next. Like if you really only have, so if you're going back home and you have a wife and 2 kids and you're going back to work, hopefully there's some time being spent preparing you for that transition. But the actual tools, I mean, I believe in the value of the lived experience. So taking the things that you learn in treatment and applying them to the world at release, which is the hat that you complimented me on. Yes. Thank you. We'll get you one. We believe in long term.
Okay.
And then slowly, working yourself back into life. But not everyone can afford to take 6 months off.
Right. So what do you suggest to those people?
That can't?
Yeah.
Do the best damn job you possibly can.
Yeah.
Like, there's all the cheesy sayings, man, and I think we could do a whole episode on this. Mm-hmm. I think the treatment world and therapists kind of made up a bunch of shit 20, 30, 40 years ago around, like, don't date in your first year, like, people, places, and things, like, all these, like, treatment kind of things that they tell you. Mm-hmm. I don't know that any of it's true. Like, I've met people that start dating 15 days sober and they're like married with kids and very happy now.
Yeah. What I found is that there needs to be a light for people to go to.
Yep.
So it's kind of just like when you're down, anything that you can attach yourself to get you by is like what you'll sort of attach yourself to. So I think those sayings, they could be like, 4 coffees a day and you'll be sober. And like people will be like, yeah, 4 coffees. It's just like whatever will help get somebody to the next level of, living good and clean, I think. But I'm with you on, I think like everyone has a different, I guess, like lived experience. But what I found the works in the program is like, I did it pretty intensely for like a 2-year period, and it made me aware of like how I was affecting other people, and it made me accountable. And I think like when I look around at everybody on the way to work on the subway and shit like that, like people are like fucking zombies. They're like on their phone, not aware, not accountable. Like there's like this crazy like epidemic of oh wow, I have like the best quote, but I forgot it. I wrote it on my, I'll come up with it later.
Your quote or someone else?
It's my quote, yeah. Epidemic of incompetence. Yes, great quote. But there's an epidemic of incompetence. I mean, we'll go down a rabbit hole on it later, but ultimately it's like when we were kids and we had like a play date, if you didn't show up, you were dead. Like something was wrong. You know what I mean? Like car accidents, something, Right. There wasn't a text. It was like I'd call your house, your mom would pick up, she'd be like, yeah, he's like on the way, right? And if you didn't show up, something happened. But now it's just everybody's like, hey, I'm late. Or like, hey, it's gone to this point. I have like meetings with like executives or whatever the fuck, and they'll send me Google Calendar. It'll be in my calendar. I'm preparing for the meeting, and I'll literally just get an alert that it was changed.
Right.
And then 20 minutes later, their assistant will be like, hey, like, frogs, they're jumping in Mississippi. We got to change it.
Right.
Like, what?
Right.
And so this whole idea of like accountability and being aware and considerate, I just feel like it's getting lost. And that's why I owe a lot to sobriety and all that shit. So,
yeah, it makes you show up. It holds you accountable. It makes you. I'll never forget. I was like 6 or 7 years sober. I was dating a girl, and we had a sleepover. We had a slumber party on a school night.
Sick.
And we overslept a little bit.
Yeah.
So she got to work at, I don't know, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I was talking to her later in the day, and I was like, what'd you tell your boss? Or was your boss upset that you were late? And it was a little thing, but it bothered me. She said, "Oh, I just told him that I forgot my computer, and then the subways were like." She just made up this elaborate story.
Yeah.
I said, "Why couldn't you just tell him that I'm sorry that I'm late. I'll try not to have it happen again."
Right.
There doesn't need to be the whole story.
Yeah.
Like, we've lost that.
Yeah. I'd say brutal honesty has gotten me in trouble a lot.
And she flipped out on me. She's like, "You calling me a liar?" I said, "I'm not."
Well,
I mean, a little bit,
lie.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah, you lied. You lied.
You fucking lied.
You lied.
Yeah. So are you're with her now?
No. And I don't think there's no chance she'll actually hear any of this. So I'm like, we're fine.
So that was like a chink in the armor of that relationship.
In any relationship.
Yeah.
If I find someone to be dishonest or lying, that's going to be a major red flag.
Right.
And I'm probably hypersensitive to it. Like, I'm probably, because of the sobriety, and I wish I could kind of give a shit less.
Yeah. Do you cut people out of your life, and if so, how?
You want to go into
No, I mean, it could be friends. It's not just about, yeah.
It's really interesting you asked this, because you must sense an energy. I was having a conversation with my dad. My dad's 82 years old.
Okay.
And we were talking about just this, like relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of said to me, like, he doesn't have a lot of time left on this planet. And he said, "Son, like, there's going to be relationships that are going to be the most meaningful relationships to you at that moment in your life. And then they are going to disappear. And they are going to go away. Sometimes you're going to cut them out. Sometimes they're going to do something to you. Sometimes you're going to move." I had a business partner and a best friend that, like, for 10 years we were thick as thieves, and he's no longer in my life. So, like, these relationships that feel so special and meaningful, a lot of them come to an end. And that's why I think the marriage or the divorce rate, like, forget it. 50% or whatever they say. Like, what about just, like, the friendship rate?
Yeah.
What's that? How many times do friendships break up?
Yeah, it's difficult to approach life, and it's important not to approach life like a scorned lover in every fucking relationship. Whether it's, like, dealing with my plumber or a girlfriend, it's just like, because I find at this point I've lost a lot of friends. I think COVID just, like, totally changed the way people engage socially.
Yeah.
But yeah, without blaming COVID, regardless, there's always people getting lost and stuff. And how I would be curious how you approach new relationships, especially when they're so similar to old ones that had to get cut off.
Yeah, I mean, look, dude, I'm 40 years old, so making friends is not the easiest thing.
Why?
Well, I'm not someone that says, you're like, I have enough friends. Like, I think that's kind of a cop-out.
Yeah.
I love meeting new people.
Right.
It takes time to build really meaningful connection, in my experience. And so, I don't know. I mean, I would ask you the same question. Like, how, like, are you cutting people out? Like, what do your relationships look like? Especially, how are your relationships with men? Because like, there's a loneliness thing going on with dudes where.
Yeah, a lot of my friends like having kids.
Yeah.
There's definitely a gravitational force around that. In the older age. I agree with you about friendship being important, and I like making new friends. I think it just has to do with, like, calling shit for what it is.
Yeah.
So, like, if I just walked into a store yesterday and somebody said something to me that made me upset, and I was like, immediately was about to react and thought, okay, what energy am I carrying? What's her job? Why is she treating me this way? And so, okay, back to just, like, practical, how to deal with entering a new relationship when it's so similar to something that hurt me in the past, I just realize, or I just say, this person is not that person. Like, this is a new relationship. I'm gonna recognize the flaws and like the flaws that I had in the past relationship, if I had any, and just like, enter it with open arms, and just realize that it's not the same person, but protect myself from.
How much of that mindset you think goes back to your experience as a child and coming to this country, and then at times maybe feeling like an outsider now in your life? Do you think that trauma translates to you wanting to make people feel included and wanting to make people feel?
I'm a people pleaser by nature, and I always want people to like me. So it's hard for me to say no. That's why when people put me in a spot that I am uncomfortable with, it pisses me off. Because they're asking me, it's like, if you ask me to help you move,
there's no right answer.
I'm just gonna get you movers. No, I'll pay for the move because, like, I'm a fucking adult. I have shit to do. No, I can't take my entire day to go and help you move.
Right.
Unless it's like some fucked up shit happened in your house and the person who like did you wrong, and it's like, and you need me personally there, then yes. But if you're just like, hey, can you help me like move some shit? I'll be like, no.
Right.
Like, fuck you. And then if you ask me again some shit like that, then it's like, you're being inconsiderate of my time, of who the fuck I am and what I do. I'm an artist. I'm not a fucking mover. If you want to spend time with me as your friend, or you need my help, or sort of like you need a shoulder to cry on or whatever, then just call it for what it is and I'll do that, But like, don't. And so anyway, the point is, I think like I get upset because I would never fucking ask someone else to do that for me. That's just because I'm aware.
Right.
Like.
But I think a lot of that's like this fourth dimension of existence that they say we get from getting sober and getting, like we've shared, like you went to rehab, you got cleaned up a bit, and then we start to really see the world a bit clearer. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I'm really leaning into recently is this whole idea that when I, in my relationships, expect something, I'm fucked. Like that you're gonna say thank you, that you're gonna hold the door for me.
Yes.
I'd rather just live and then appreciate when it does happen.
Yeah.
Like moving from expectations to appreciation for me is really where I'm trying to spend time right now, because if I just walk around this planet expecting things from other people, I'm going to be disappointed.
Damn. Yeah. All the time.
All the time.
Yeah, maybe I should stop expecting people to get off their phones in the subway. I find myself passing judgment. Not all the time, but when I do, I recognize it. And I'm just like, I don't know. Yeah, it's like what you were saying before. Like, I wish I was less aware of shit. Yeah.
And it's just, for me, it's knowing and having confidence that I'm treating people the right way. Mm-hmm. And in managing a business, this happens all the time. Someone will give notice, and rather than just saying, thank you for this opportunity, I'm moving on,
right,
they gotta throw in the fucking, like, the little zinger.
Oh, no.
I just can't be in a job where I'm attached to my phone all the time, or the environment, the culture, and, like, I'll take it so personally.
Yeah.
And then I'll want to write back and be like, dude, I gave you 4 weeks of vacation, paid you well. I want to like build the case. Mm-hmm. Instead, my response has to be 100% of the time, thank you so much, I'm rooting for you.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to win that.
Right.
I'm not going to fucking win that conversation. Mm. You're not going to, I mean, maybe. You're this powerful, and some of your art will inspire people to get off their phones, but you're not in that moment going to inspire people to get off their phones. It's just that battle is lost.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's not a battle I'm gonna choose to. It's not necessarily a battle. It's more just like, yeah, I'll just make art about it and like, until I can find a solution that's like useful. But I
Yeah.
don't know. But yeah, I think I guess not to stray from the point. I guess like living, giving without expectation is like a fundamental like part of my recovery. I think it sounds like it's part of yours
Yeah.
as well. And yeah, what it's one of those sayings is expectation robbed us of our serenity. Is that what the fuck it is?
Yeah,
fill in
I
the
think
blank or whatever.
No, you're right. There's something in the big book about that. Like the higher your expectations go up, like the lower your serenity sinks.
Oh, okay.
It's something along like it's.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel that. You said something earlier that which was fucking really powerful to me to hear, because it explained to me what I try to tell people who are trying to get sober is the light. Like, what is that light? And we all, when we finally find, like for me, the light is, or has been, my work at Release Recovery. I love running. I love going to sporting events. I love going to live music. I love playing golf. Like, I know what my light is. I know what I want to keep working towards, like being able to do those things in a way that feels good to me. And it sounds like you had the financial success, and then ultimately you got to a place where, like, yes, you had done some therapy, you had been to some meetings, you had gotten cleaned up, but there was, like, the light was still missing.
Yeah, so what happened was I was making all these moves to get to have the cookie and like, get the trust from my family and show people that I was a
Good person.
Yeah, a good person, just like a stable, upstanding citizen who's just fucking killing it.
Yeah.
You want to fix that?
No, we're good.
I feel bad.
Don't feel bad.
I feel so bad. And in all of that work, I was suppressing all of my creativity.
Yeah.
And being a kid.
Yep.
I was sacrificing my like childhood so that I could grow up.
Yep.
And yeah, I just couldn't suppress it anymore. There was this like explosion of creativity because before I became sober, I was making a lot of music. I was always creative. I was always outside. Everyone was playing video games. I was outside. I was skateboarding, rollerblading, BMXing, like everything. Sports and all that shit. And then, yeah, once I became an adult, it was like adult. And it's like when you start being an adult, or when it's when you start like, when you stop being a kid, that's when you start dying. That's how I feel. It's like I have to be a kid all the time. That's why I say dumb shit and dress like a kid, like, because I'm a kid. And if I stop being a kid, then I stop having fun. I was reading that the opposite.
I'm leaning into that energy.
Yeah, the opposite of happiness isn't sadness. It's boredom. So I'm just like, all right, I can't be bored. That's
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss. Have you read that book?
I know of Tim Ferriss, and
Yeah.
I need to indulge.
Yeah. I'm in the sort of beginning of the book, but yeah, that's what happened. It was that I was ignoring, I guess you could say, like spirituality in a sense, but really I was sacrificing my creativity because I thought that was what got me in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But you use this word "trapped" as the inspiration for a lot of your work.
Mm-hmm.
Is that relate to like the freedom piece that you were just talking about, or I mean, it's literally, if you read your bio on your website, it's in the first 5 or 6 lines, like that word, and it just jumped out at me. And so I'm just curious, like where, and obviously like, this is like, I think this one's called addiction, right? Like this guy's head is come back here.
Right. I guess what I learned about myself is like I'm the only one that's preventing my progress. Like I'm the only one that's setting the like putting myself in my own jail.
Yeah.
So I'm the only one stopping myself. Everybody's there. I found myself like always at the edge of the cliff, knowing that this 5 minutes of pain is the only thing preventing me from a lifetime of changes. So it's like if I'm in a bad relationship, you know, I'm not going to stay in it for 40 years because of like the Bible or whatever the fuck, you know? And I find that those 5 minutes or whatever, call it 5 hours of a shitty conversation and having to move out and feeling bad. Like I'm choosing a relationship as an example. You could say with a bad job, you know, a shitty boss or whatever. It's like, you know,
People choose to stay in that shit forever.
right, because of fear, because of comfort, because of whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But it's on them, like, to just escape that.
Sarah, what
And-
time you got it over there? I just want to make. Cool. I just have a 1:30, but we're good. Let's keep ripping.
Yeah. So that's it. That's all it is. It's, you know, it's definitely a mental health piece. Like, a lot of the work is about. Yeah, I mean, when I look around, yeah, a lot of the work is just about confinement and being trapped, and that 5 minutes of like ripping the Band-Aid off. Yeah.
And why do you think that so many people struggle to do that and just conform to what they believe others want them to be, or what they have fooled themselves into thinking that they should be?
As you get older, you start having to be practical about your life. There's real bills to pay. Like mom and dad are not there to pay your shit. So you got to figure it out. And so that dream of being, you know, a stand-up comedian or a fashion designer or whatever, it's like if you couldn't cut it, then, you know, you got to figure out how to be pragmatic. And I think that I've seen it even with myself. Like, as I get older, there's just less, like, mega risks that I want to take. Because making it requires some naivety. And it requires some grandiosity.
How much of
Yeah.
your work fuels your mental health, fuels your ability?
Oh, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like free therapy.
Well, you shared that. I mean, like when we walked into this space, and just like if you're listening, the space is sick and beautiful, and it's just the energy. As soon as I walked in, you know, Julius met me at the door, and the greenery and the plants and the life in here is just so amazing. But you said to me, if you could live here, you maybe would, but you wouldn't, because if you're living in the space where you work, you'll never turn it off. And I've never identified with something more,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Does
great.
it feel like work?
No, like it doesn't feel daunting necessarily. There always is that. I mean, of course, there's taxes and all this shit and like, you know,
Yeah.
adult things. But in general, like it doesn't feel like a grind. Like I'm excited. Like when we get off of this, I have to go sculpt and print and like there's so many things that I'm excited to do. But it ebbs and flows. But it's definitely work. No question. You know, it's definitely work. But I do think that like the return on investment of having a place that I live at and a place that I work at is by like orders of magnitude for my mental health. I don't think it could necessarily. It can't be calculated in like a tangible way, but I do recognize how it affects my relationship, and I've spoken to my girlfriend about that, where I'm just like, hey, I'm looking for I was working out of my house for a year or so, and I told her from the beginning, I was like, listen, this is going to be a challenge for our relationship because I don't know when my work stops and when my personal life stops or starts or whatever the fuck.
No, yeah.
And so I had to be I had to have that conversation with her and be communicative about that. So that's why I need a place to live and a place to work.
Yeah, I think the bottom's gonna fall out. Like the whole COVID, work from home, don't be around other people. That story is not all been told.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be productive for businesses. I don't think it's gonna be productive for humanity, our mental health, the whole thing. Just sitting at home, wedged in a corner somewhere, like hacking away. I don't think as humans we were meant to live that way. But
I mean,
you
the
know.
COVID, there's so much left to unpack. I mean, nobody's even talked about the mental health, like psychological damage caused by just shutting people down. You know,
We're trying to talk about it here. We're trying to do it right now
Yeah.
with you. You know.
I don't, there's so much left to unpack about it, because that shit was amazing. COVID was amazing for me. And I know for many other people it was not.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So if you look at your work and you look you up, like you've had this, it's very fascinating to me because you've worked with a lot of cool people. We don't need to get into who, because quite frankly, I have this belief though that the people that like you've traveled in some interesting circles, you've been in some interesting rooms, right? Like, but I don't get the sense that like you're so humble around it. I don't get the sense that you actually wanted that. Do you believe that because that is your energy, it actually makes you more attractive to these people because they know that you're not in it for the star fuckery or like whatever? Like, does that am I making sense with that question? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
like people
I have an anecdote about that. So I used to be obsessed with Jordans,
yeah.
with sneakers. There's a big deal.
I'm retiring, but yeah.
Yes. And then I became a landlord. But I would still wake up at like 7 a.m. and like get a sneaker bot and try and like get the thing.
Yeah.
And one day I woke up and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I own real estate. Here I am, like, trying to sneaker bot some shoes. Let me just focus on real estate, be the best at that. And I could buy whatever fucking shoes I want whenever, you know?
Right.
And so when I put my focus on things up here, all the other things, like, shuffle in. Like, my focus is not about being around celebrity people because I don't give a shit. My focus is about making the best art, telling the best stories, and just fostering genuine relationships with people I give a fuck about. I think there's a real, like, I take a lot of pride in like the close 5 people around me.
You're young. We're young. I mean,
we're young.
We're young. We're young guys.
Yeah.
We have a lot of light that we're chasing, or the light has come in. What is next for you? What is important to hear about Julius and his journey and where you're going?
Yeah, what's next is like I've tattooed, a lot of people, and now I want to tattoo the earth. So the objective from this point forward is to produce these sculptures and the ones that I'm working on a
Bigger scale.
on a massive scale, yeah.
And leave them.
And just leave them. Yeah. Cuz
I always knew I wanted to be an artist. I mean, the way that your mom, and like you really do, you're leaving I mean, like we all leave legacy. We all leave. I think the powerful thing you said about like tattooed a lot of people and they die, so all your artwork dies. I mean, that you might have a lot of tattoo artists turning in their pens after this episode, if you know what I mean. Like, like that's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah.
And what about the guy out there that's like struggling with his mental health, or like, you've become a champion of it, and you're speaking a lot through your art around the mental health thing, and that's obviously something we're passionate about here. And I just, I love human connection. I love authentic conversation. What is one thing you would tell someone who's struggling with their mental health?
Get a pen and a paper, like a journal, and just write.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah, you need to find an outlet. Like, if we're like a heating system, there's a pressure valve, and that pressure valve needs to be released. Look at that. You know what I'm saying?
That was nuts. That was fucking nuts, dude.
I have no buttons. Just, yeah.
We just have the energy.
Yeah.
All we are is dust in the wind. Who was that, Kansas? Yeah.
That's
all
right.
we are.
I don't know, actually. I don't know if that's
It's a great song.
Yeah.
It'll be a lead into this episode.
Yeah.
Dude,
The Will Ferrell version.
Yeah, okay. You're an inspiring human. I really appreciate your time, welcoming us into your space, and just what you're doing. Like your willingness to be creative, and I don't know, man. I feel very happy to have had this conversation with you. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, feelings mutual.
Thanks, bro.